From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
After a highly contested race, Arizona announces its first female U.S. Senator. We take a look at what the election of Democrat Kyrsten Sinema means for the future of Arizona politics.
Wildfires rage across our neighboring state of California, and it's said to be the deadliest wildfire yet. Arizona steps up to send help and resources to the state. Next.
Plus, a new study takes a look at the mental health toll of disasters and tragedy for Arizona's first responders.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jordan Daphnis.
And I'm Matt Lively. Thank you for joining us.
Democrat Kyrsten Sinema is the apparent winner of the U.S. Senate race, replacing Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who chose not to run for re-election. The race was one of the closest watched races in the nation and also one of the closest races in terms of the returns.
Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein joins us now in the broadcast center to tell us what this means for the 2020 election.
There are several factors to consider for the upcoming 2020 election, where Arizona will elect a senator to finish the late Senator John McCain's term and choose a president. Those factors include voter turnout and down-ballot voting.
And we did this because voting is a fundamental part of our democracy. Our country is at its best when everyone is engaged.
Voters already broke turnout records in the midterms, but Chief Operating Officer Doug Cole says even more could head to the polls in 2020 because it's a presidential election.
And we must assume that President Trump's going to run again. So that will drive out a lot of voters, just as this election went from a 48% participation rate last midterm to a 65%.
According to Cole, split ticket voting is unusual in a midterm election. But that's exactly what happened in Arizona.
What that means to us political analysts is that nearly 181,000 voters voted for Governor Ducey, but then turned around and voted for Kyrsten Sinema.
This could mean Martha McSally still has a shot at landing a Senate seat. McSally lost by just under 2%, but Cole says this might be reason for Governor Doug Ducey to appoint her to replace Senator Jon Kyl. Kyl was appointed by Governor Doug Ducey to fulfill the remainder of the late Senator John McCain's term.
That would be a very wise appointment on his part, because this was a close race. Half of the Arizonans voted for Martha McSally.
McSally would then have to run again in 2020 and 2022. But Cole says it would be easier for McSally to run as an incumbent. Political analyst Bob Grossfeld says for Democrats, one of the advantages of having a U.S. Senator in the Democratic Party is that the Democrats now have a leader of the party from Arizona.
Now, Senator Sinema will be a good addition to Senator McCain's legacy.
Grossfeld says Republicans have taken Arizona for granted.
It was a sure thing for the Republicans, particularly at the presidential level, to just take Arizona without a whole lot of investment.
Cole says Arizona isn't quite purple yet. He says it's trending more towards blue, but it's still a Republican state.
But what this shows is with a lot of work, and the Democrat Party put a lot of resources on the ground, it pays off. And you can see that by Greg Stanton winning so heavily in CD9.
Cole also says that for the first time since statehood in 1912, Arizona is going to have 2 freshman senators. He says the United States Senate runs on tenure, so Arizona might not have the political power that it is used to for a while. In the broadcast center, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
A historic class of House freshmen with both major political parties represented have arrived in Washington, D.C. this week for orientation on the nuts and bolts of the unique job they've been elected to. In our D.C. bureau, Ian Solomon has the story.
Just last week, Greg Stanton was former mayor of Phoenix. Today in Washington, D.C., he's gearing up to serve Arizona with a new title, Congressman-elect.
Excited to be here, first day of orientation, and we're going to change Washington in a very positive way, and today we start.
Stanton is one of 86 new members of the 116th Congress starting orientation here in Washington. And while getting his new Capitol Hill credentials is great, he says he's more excited about getting to work on key issues.
You can't represent Arizona without being a supporter of comprehensive immigration reform, particularly a DREAM Act. So I want to be involved. I want to be at the table as we finally do get comprehensive immigration reform passed.
That may not be a long shot now that Democrats have secured a House majority for the first time in 8 years. Congressman Tom O'Halloran, who's been here when Democrats were in the minority, pointed to some of his own bills he hopes will pass. Not because Democrats will force it, but because having the upper hand can foster bipartisanship.
Once you have the ability to sit at a table and have leverage, both parties have to come to an agreement, one way or the other.
And just having the opportunity to be at the table is, in Stanton's own words, awesome.
And, you know, as a kid who grew up in West Phoenix in a working class family over by Metro Center, my dad sold shoes at JCPenney for 35 years. To have the opportunity now to represent my community in Washington, D.C., try to do what's right for Arizona or for the United States of America, that's an awesome thing.
Congresswoman-elect Ann Kirkpatrick is also considered a new member, despite the fact that she's already served 2 terms in the House. We'll be sure to keep up with both of these new members in the coming days. In Washington, Ian Solomon, Cronkite News.
Along with the race for Senate, the race for Superintendent of Public Instruction was also called Monday night. Democrat Kathy Hoffman has been declared the winner, beating Republican Frank Riggs by 2 percentage points. The race for Secretary of State between Democrat Katie Hobbs and Republican Steve Gaynor is still too close to call. You can track our continuing election coverage on cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
Wildfires continue to rage on across California, leaving millions of people under warnings and thousands of acres of land destroyed. The Woolsey Fire in Southern California has burned over 90,000 acres of land and caused 2 deaths. And in Northern California, the Camp Fire is now the deadliest in state history, leaving more than 40 people dead and burning more than 100,000 acres.
This morning, our numbers are 113,000 acres and 25% contained. Still haven't allowed anybody back into the area. There's still a lot of things going on up there, clearing power lines, basically making it safe for the residents before they can return.
200 people are still missing, and the death toll is expected to rise.
Neighboring states are assisting with the wildfire, Arizona being one of them. Some firefighters from across the state are already on the front lines. Cronkite News reporter Edgardo Lozoya spoke with fire officials from both the city of Glendale and the Department of Forestry and Fire Management.
Crews from Phoenix, Tucson, Glendale, and Peoria are just some of the departments that are currently in California battling the blazes after what has become the most destructive series of fires in the state's history. Arizona fire crews have stepped up to help their California counterparts as that state finds itself overwhelmed by the magnitude of the fires and what little they are leaving behind. The city of Glendale currently has 5 firefighters on the ground.
Anytime that there's a tragedy anywhere, whether it's in our own state or another state, we want to lend resources if we have a way to help. So we're going to send as many people as we possibly can and as many resources as we can to help stop the fires.
144 firefighters and 42 engines from across Arizona are currently in California. The Camp Fire, which started last week, has already destroyed about 125,000 acres, while the majority of Arizona crews are fighting the Woolsey Fire near Malibu that has charred more than 96,000 acres.
The remainder of the crews will be acting as backfill for local fire departments, filling in, running those daily 911 calls. Some are kind of just staged, waiting on possible new fire starts, and others will be assigned to other fires throughout the state.
This fire, though it's a little later in the season, it's a little less normal. It's the largest fire that California's ever seen, and it's going to require the most amount of resources. So we're glad to be part of the effort to help.
It's not uncommon for Arizona firefighters to travel to California to help tackle fires. Davila says that's what neighbors do.
It goes both ways. They help us during our fire season, and we'll go out and help California, Oregon, Nevada, wherever we're needed to help them and get those extra boots on the ground.
Forestry and management officials say Arizona firefighters will be in California for a minimum 14-day assignment, with the majority in Southern California. In the broadcast center, Edgardo Lozoya, Cronkite News.
First responders are exposed to graphic, tragic situations on the job every day. Now, a recent study by the University of Arizona shows professionals with EMT jobs face a greater risk of suicide compared to non-EMT job holders. Cronkite News reporter John Cardinelli looked into the study in the effort to offer support.
Firefighters and paramedics view a lot of things on the job that the normal person hopefully never has to see.
The worst of the worst, from child abuse to infant deaths to infant drownings, which we just had one this week.
Ray Mayone is a Phoenix firefighter and says it is seeing these types of tragedies on the job that cause mental health problems.
It's a constant barrage of 24 hours every third day of seeing this type of human tragedy. So sooner or later, it's going to take its toll.
Unfortunately, a recent study done here at the University of Arizona Medical Center showed that there is a rise in EMT suicides here in the state of Arizona.
On average, Arizona lost 9 EMTs to suicide each year during the study period. Additionally, our main finding was that EMTs in the state of Arizona were 39% more likely to commit suicide compared to the general population.
Researchers were able to identify who had died by suicide and fit an EMT job description. After the study, the Arizona Department of Health Services partnered with U of A to create a resiliency website where EMTs dealing with thoughts of suicide or PTSD can go to get help.
Really, our main goal was to try to promote awareness around these topics and to try to sort of break down a little bit some of the barriers to even talking about some of these things.
And Mayone says these types of support websites are important when trying to save the life of someone who saves lives.
It's just now coming around that the mental injuries are just as significant as the physical injuries. So that's why we have poured so much effort into the resources for our members on the mental health side.
In Phoenix, John Cardinelli, Cronkite News.
Dr. Bob Rose says the study will continue to be conducted as they are interested in finding out more on the reasoning behind these numbers. They hope to create a database of this information to raise awareness.
A migrant caravan with thousands of Central Americans is drawing nearer to the southern U.S. border.
Coming up on Cronkite News, we talk to experts about what you could see happening once the migrants arrive at their final destinations.
Plus, find out how ASU women's basketball is making an impact on a community nearly 300 miles from Tempe.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.
As journalists at Cronkite News, we report on stories that matter to you by focusing on the local impact. We dig deeper and work tirelessly to keep you informed.
Live in Wickerburg.
Live in Los Angeles. In Cleveland.
In Washington. In Louisville.
From Jerusalem.
Live in Philadelphia.
From around the world to right here in Phoenix.
At Cronkite News, we report the facts and stick to the truth.
CNN is taking action against President Donald Trump and is suing the president and top White House aides for suspending CNN correspondent Jim Acosta's press pass. The lawsuit says denying Acosta's press pass and access to the White House violates both his and CNN's First and Fifth Amendment rights. The White House suspended Acosta's pass after accusing him of putting his hands on an intern who tried to take away his microphone at a press conference.
President Donald Trump reportedly wants to fire Homeland Secretary Kyrsten Sinema, according to the Washington Post. The Post reported that multiple current and former White House officials say it could happen in the next few weeks or sooner. Trump has accused Sinema of not being aggressive enough when it comes to immigration enforcement.
The U.S. government says it's working to harden the border crossing from Tijuana, Mexico, to prepare for the arrival of a migrant caravan of thousands of Central Americans. The caravan left shelters in the western city of Guadalajara today to head to their next destination. But there are many other smaller caravans that have spread out across Mexico. Customs and Border Protection says it's closing 4 lanes at the San Diego port of entry. They also said they would be installing new infrastructure to prepare for the potential safety and security the caravan could pose.
The question being asked across the country is what happens when they get to the border? Cronkite News reporter Charlene Santiago has the details on the plans the government has to detain the asylum seekers.
For 60 days, the government sought public comment on a plan to expand its ability to detain immigrant families and children. And for 60 days, it got comment after comment. More than 66,000 written statements were submitted by the time the commenting period ended earlier this month. That's about 1,100 comments a day. People were sharing their thoughts on a plan by the Department of Homeland Security and of Health and Human Services, which aims at getting around a court ruling that limits family detention.
We have 2 limitations currently with respect to family units. One is the amount of detention space for family residential centers, and the second is the Flores Settlement Agreement, which limits our ability to hold past 20 days.
The proposal comes as government agencies are grappling with a surge in immigration cases. Fiscal 2017 saw a 20% increase in unaccompanied children arriving at the border and a 42% increase in family apprehensions. Holding families longer would make it easier for the government to process their cases, but one expert said it could serve another goal in the administration's agenda.
The administration also sees detention as having a potential deterrent effect. If people in Central America hear that families are coming and they're being held in detention, effectively jail, they're less likely to come to the United States, at least in the administration's opinion.
Also in the works is a plan for DHS to license its own detention centers instead of having to rely on states to license them.
A lot of people would probably feel a lot better about it if there were an independent party that was overseeing this issue.
Government officials are required to review the thousands of comments and then publish a final draft of the regulation that could go into effect 45 days after its publication. But the plan is already facing legal challenges in court. In Washington, Charlene Santiago, Cronkite News.
ASU women's basketball team played a tough game against number 4 Baylor this weekend.
But coming up on Cronkite News, find out how the game was a special win for the Native American community.
It is definitely feeling a lot like fall in the Southwest region, especially here in Arizona. More on your current temperatures coming up next.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people to see those kids drink clean water for the first time. It's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
Here at Cronkite News, we have producers who craft shows that make an impact on our community. Our broadcasts allow students to be involved in all levels of production, from producing to directing. We are guided by highly respected professionals who mentor the journalists of tomorrow. From technical directing to teleprompting and beyond, our production crew works tirelessly to produce meaningful and award-winning shows. We are Cronkite News on Arizona PBS.
The search for a second Amazon headquarters is finally finished, ending a year-long bidding war. The world's biggest online retailer received 238 bids from cities across the United States and Canada. HQ2 will be split between New York and City and Washington, D.C. suburb. Amazon said they will be investing a total of $5 billion, and the two locations will each gain 25,000 jobs.
This past weekend, the ASU women's basketball team made the 5-hour trip to Window Rock, Arizona for a matchup against number 4 Baylor. But for the team, this trip was about more than just a game. Reporter Anthony Totri has the story.
No expensive shoes, no perfect hoops, and sometimes no court at all. But that doesn't stop the passion for basketball for those in Window Rock, the Navajo Nation capital.
If there's a basketball and a hoop, you can basically just play anywhere.
This past weekend, that passion was showcased on national television as fans packed Window Rock High School's 6,500-seat gymnasium for the showdown on the res. A game between Arizona State and Baylor's teams. For many, it marked the first time they experienced Division I basketball. Although the game's significance can't be understated, it was about more than just basketball.
Having them here inspires me to go bigger, dream bigger, and just have a mindset that wherever you live, you can always achieve more than you think.
It's almost like every other house has a basketball hoop out front here, and that's because basketball on the res is different than it is back in Phoenix. For many, it means everything here.
Coming to this community, it's like, wow, there's a lot of kids that you're really going to impact, and having this opportunity is just amazing.
The team's goal was to leave a lasting reminder that anything is possible. And if there's one piece of advice Coach Charlie Turner-Thorne has for those on the res, it's to follow the path that came before them.
They had a fire inside of them. They were hungry to do things that, they weren't sure they could do. I would tell them, it's okay if you don't think you can do it, but go for it.
With 5,600 in attendance and thousands of kids in the stands, the Sun Devils left those on the reservation with an experience unlike any other. In Window Rock, Anthony Totri, Cronkite News.
Thank you. The Sun Devils were unable to beat the Bears, but Coach Turner-Thorne believes what the team set out to do beyond the game was accomplished.
Temperatures are cooling down here in the valley, and it's finally starting to feel like fall.
Let's check in with Alexis Liel in the Weather Center to see what we can expect for the rest of the week. Alexis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yet another cool day here in the valley. 67 degrees right now here in Phoenix, but we are seeing nothing but sunshine. Looking at the high temperatures around the state today, 67 right now here in Phoenix. Up in the higher country, 40 degrees in Flagstaff, 39 degrees in Heber, 62 in Tucson, and 72 degrees in Yuma. Here's what you can expect later tonight around dinner time, 6 o'clock, 63 degrees. By 8 p.m., we're going to be at 59, going all the way down to 55 by 10 o'clock as well. Low temperatures around the valley tomorrow. Average temperature is 54 degrees, but we are going to be dropping down to 48 degrees here in Phoenix. East Valley, 43 in Mesa, and 43 degrees in Goodyear as well. High temperatures around the state. Average temperature is 78 degrees, but we are going to be in the low 70s as our high temperature. But the high temperatures for tomorrow are much warmer than what we have been seeing today. 72 in Phoenix, up in the higher country, 46 in Flagstaff, and 74 degrees in Yuma. Looking at your 7-day forecast, we will be having some few cloudy days throughout the week, but into the weekend, we're going to be topping off at 73 degrees, ending my week on Tuesday at 72. From the Cronkite Weather Center, I'm Alexis Liel, Cronkite News.
If you've ever wanted to try out throwing an axe, the perfect place just opened for you.
Coming up on Cronkite News. The new axe throwing bar called Lumberjacks allows you to release your inner lumberjack. Next.
If you're looking for one show that tells you what happened that day in the world of business, it's NBR.
We saw a classic shipwreck.
Nordstrom's opening stores.
Triple-digit gains.
Crude climbs.
We're there to help our audience find new investment ideas.
The market still has room to go up.
Nightly Business Report is the longest-running business television program in history.
Weeknights at 10:30 on Arizona PBS.
I'm Matt Berry, ESPN Sports Center anchor and graduate of ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. With its bachelor's and master's degrees in sports journalism, the Cronkite School is preparing the next generation of sports journalists to tell stories that matter, stories that excite, inspire, and inform. Cronkite immerses students in covering sports at all levels in one of the country's top sports markets. It's this hands-on experience under the guidance of award-winning sports media veterans that shape the top journalists of tomorrow.
By the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. Being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
If that long holiday weekend wasn't long enough, or you just need to get some pent-up aggression out after the election, you may want to head to Tempe. Reporter James Barnett shows us a new spot that lets patrons throw axes just for fun.
If you think you've tried everything in the valley, Lumberjacks in Tempe is offering something a little different.
I mean, what's selling? We're throwing axes. It's just about having fun here. You throw an axe, you kill it.
And as for safety,
easy now, they do bounce.
Their record's clean so far.
Absolutely no injuries. We have really strict safety protocols to make sure that all customers are absolutely safe here.
It's a different experience. It's super, super different. You get to drink, you get to eat, like there's no restrictions. I didn't do well at all. During the game, I only got one. But like during practice, I did really well. Like I got like a couple.
Not everyone gets it on their first try.
I was almost stuck. You were right there.
But with some coaching,
Bring it all the way back first, take a step, and release.
practice makes perfect. Whether you want to relieve some stress or let out your inner Viking, throwing an axe at a giant wooden target is sure to do the job. In Tempe, James Barnett, Cronkite News.
That's it for Cronkite News. Thanks for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.